Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Blueprint Career Services, a presentation, Staying Motivated, Energize, and Recharge Your Job Search. First, I'd like to do a brief access check. Please do let us know if you're having challenges hearing us, and if you can see the presentation clearly, and let us know if there are any other access needs that might affect your participation. So you can put that in the chat if you'd like. Okay, great, loud and clear, wonderful. And again, we're recording this, so you can always access it afterwards. Thanks, everyone. Okay, thank you very much. Before we begin, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it's been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we're grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. And for myself, as I reflect on this important land acknowledgement as an immigrant, as a settler myself, in my practice, I work to learn more about the rich history of Indigenous people and to work towards decolonization of history in Canada through my practice and research. First, I'd like to get to some brief housekeeping. So again, my name is Ann Park. I am this career strategist here at Blueprint Career Services. And I'd like to ask to please remember to keep your cameras and your mics off during the presentation. Post questions and comments in the chat. Questions will be responded to at the end of the, well, in this case, at the end of the presentation. Please complete our very brief survey at the end of our presentation. And again, this session is being recorded and will be posted on our Blueprint Career Services portal. Great. Now I'd like to tell everyone a bit about what we do in addition to this amazing real talk that we're having today. We also have industry insights panels. So similar to real talk, we invite industry experts in various sectors to discuss employment opportunities in their particular fields. Again, it's offered every third Wednesday of the month online from 12 to 1:30. To access our library of industry insights panel, you can go onto our website because they are recorded as well. So we have some really interesting ones up there. We also have something called the Clifton Strengths Workshop. It's a 3-hour workshop which involves completing an assessment that identifies your top 5 themes and then a workshop to discuss the science behind Clifton Strengths and how Clifton Strengths can benefit your career, followed by a one-on-one career Clifton Strengths coaching session with me. We also have the Career Wayfinding Series workshops. This is a series of 3-hour workshops that use a design thinking principles to design your career. And last but not least, we have Career Nav, which are one-on-one career strategist sessions with me. And so working with me, I would support you to achieve your career goals. And for more information, please do email us at scs.blueprint@utoronto.ca. Great. Now, without further ado, I am honored to introduce our amazing guest speaker, Johan Mehta. I'm just going to let you know a little bit about Johan. He's an organizational psychologist and certified change management consultant with expertise in HR, organizational development, talent management, change management, business transformation, leadership development, and coaching. He currently works at Deloitte Canada, and he's previously worked for Walmart, Accenture, Royal Bank of Canada, and U of T. Johan has a master's in IO psychology and is fascinated with human behavior. He's passionate about leveraging the power of people as a strategic advantage to propel business growth. Johan is known for hiring, engaging, developing, and retaining top talent to maximize workplace productivity and performance. His work focuses on developing robust change strategies, communications, and training plans, and enhancing employee engagement to drive a culture of high performance. As a career coach, Johan helps professionals gain career clarity, stand out as top talent, accelerate their job search success, ace interviews, and land their dream job faster. It's amazing. In the past 3 years, Johan has helped over 300 professionals land amazing jobs, I have no doubt of that, at top companies including Amazon, Deloitte, EY, Loblaws, Marriott, PwC, RBC, Shopify, TD Bank, Walmart, and many more. When he's not working, Johan can be found volunteering his time to support new immigrants settle into Canada, empowering professionals to fulfill their dream careers, coaching leaders, and goofing around, entertaining his two daughters, who are now 6 and 9, and newborn son. So without ado, I'd like to welcome our incredible guest speaker, Johan Mehta. Yay!
Thank you so very much. I really, really appreciate that. Can you guys see me okay and hear me okay? Just want to do a quick check first. Yeah? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I truly appreciate what you said over there. And I don't know if I could have done any better myself. So really appreciate and your kind words. I am super excited. I've been waiting for this presentation for a couple of weeks now, and I am super pumped about, being in front of all of you, at least virtually on Zoom, and presenting to you. We have close to 70 people on this call, and I'm very grateful as well as very blessed to be able to spend some time with you today, share my knowledge, share my expertise and experiences, and hopefully provide you with some guidance, some tips, and sometimes, just the confidence to help you and energize your job search for you. So when we talk about job search, and you can go to the next slide, Carla. You know, I like to think about things from a process perspective. Just, having spent so much time working on transformation projects and process improvement projects, I like to look at things as a step by step or in a process format. So the job search is similar to me. There are certain amount of certain number of steps that we take in a particular sequence for us to go from not knowing what we want to do to ending up in a career that is rewarding, that is fulfilling, beyond just getting a job. And that truly energizes us and enables us to give our best performance in whatever that setting and whatever that job is. Before we get into the tactical aspects of the job search, I want to spend some time over here thinking about mindset. And this is why I put mindset as step number one. So if we go to the next slide, I want to expand a little bit on what I mean by having a positive mindset, right? More often than not, when people begin searching for jobs, they go away and they start working on their resumes, or they'll start networking with people and doing those tactical actions. But I think before we dive into that, we have to sit with ourselves and ask ourselves, how am I approaching this from a mindset perspective, right? Am I being anxious? Am I being fearful? Am I having some self-doubt because, I have been unemployed for a certain amount of time? And those are all perfectly normal emotions for us to go through, right? I mean, I've been doing this for a few years now, and I know, and I've worked with people, who have been unemployed for weeks, for months, sometimes even for a couple of years, or they are transitioning back into the workforce after a break, right? So it's perfectly okay for us to have a mindset around negativity. But let me tell you this, having that mindset will only hurt us. It does not serve us. And especially right now, when we know that the job market is definitely very testing, right? Every day we wake up, there's news about hiring freezes, there's news about layoffs happening, and it plays with our mind, right? However, my recommendation over here is to think about your thoughts, to think about your feelings, and not to take things too personally and not to be too hard on yourselves. The other thing over here I want to point out is being able to control what you can control. So, what can we control? We can control the way we think, the way we feel, and having good intentions around that, right? We can control putting in a plan of action around our job search. We can control being committed to it, right? We can control getting help from people if things are not working out on our own. So those are all things and actions we can control. We cannot control what happens out there in the market. We cannot control the layoffs. We cannot control the budget cuts, right? We cannot control if our application will get accepted or rejected. We cannot control being ghosted by recruiters. So even that exercise itself, I think, is quite powerful, where you think about what you can control, doing that with the right intention, being focused and committed on that. And if you do that long enough, more often than not, you will get the results. But again, step one is just having that positive attitude and having a mindset of abundance and growth, as opposed to, things are never going to work out. It's been a few months. Um, I don't know what's wrong with me. We want to avoid those kind of conversations with ourselves. Okay. I'll move on to step two. So once we are in that positive frame of mind, typically what I recommend is asking yourself, do you have clarity in terms of what's next for you? Right. And this step is super important, because if you right away go to, working on your resume or your LinkedIn profile without knowing what's next for you, you may design a resume or a profile that is not aligned with what you truly want for your next role, right? And then you might end up reworking your resume or your LinkedIn profile, or you may use the resume but it won't get the results for you. So very important to spend some time on step number two, which is being clear on what's next for you. And when I say what's next for you, I mean what's next for you from a role perspective. So what are those professions and specific roles within those professions that you want to target? You also want to be clear about what level is best suited for you, right? You also want to be clear on what types of industries do you want to target, right? Do you want to stick to what you've done before, or do you want to try out a new industry? And then specific organizations within those industries that either resonate with your goal, whose mission you're aligned with, or you really like the services they provide or the products they have, or you've heard good things, or just organizations that have the roles that you're targeting. Okay, so very important to get that clarity. Now, the question is, how do you get that clarity? And there's some work involved in this as well. So I typically recommend this framework that you see on the slide over here. So clarity in terms of role and company and all of this comes from self-awareness about yourself first, right? So you have to look at, for example, your talents and your skills. So what have you done in the past, and what skills have you used? And what are your natural strengths and talents, right? You can take assessments to identify this. You can have conversations with people you've worked with to really hone in on those talents and strengths. The second is the interest. So, what kind of tasks and activities have you done in the past that really energize you, as opposed to draining your energy? And you want to think about roles where you will do those tasks that really pump you up, as opposed to mundane things that either are no longer interesting for you, no longer meaningful for you, and they don't fuel your passion. And the third thing is values. So values is all about what is most important to you in your career right now. So is that the type of role and the work you'll be doing within that role? Is it opportunities for growth and learning within that role? Is it the type of organization and the industry for that organization? Is it compensation, right? So you want to be making X amount of money. Is it flexibility, right? So what's most important for me right now is I want a job that allows for remote work or hybrid work, right? So I'm not going to even waste my time targeting things that have me come into the office more than 3 times a week, just to give you an example. Okay. You also want to look at working conditions, right? And the culture of the organization. And a lot of this you can find online, but I also recommend having conversations with people working over there to find out about, the work, the people, the culture, the conditions, and then seeing if that resonates with you and that aligns with your values. And I mean, there are different assessments. Anne mentioned the Clifton Strengths Finder, right? So that is falls within the talent and the skills bucket that tells you what your top 5 strengths are, and then how can you leverage those strengths for your ideal next role. But if you just do a search for an occupational interest assessments or a values assessment, there are tons of free tools out there. Okay. So step 2 is being clear about what's next for you. Now, once you have that clarity, then we move on to step 3. And step 3 is then all about positioning your career documents to align with what's next for you. And typically, I recommend starting with your resume. Okay. And making sure that your resume is aligned with what you have decided as your target role. Okay. Now, a lot of people have the misconception that a resume is a document where you have to write down every single thing you did because you don't want to miss out on all of the experiences you've had. So that's a big misconception, uh, because resumes these days are more of marketing documents, right? So they are typically 1 page or 2 pages, depending on the years of experience you have. And this is not your entire life history or your work experience history, but it's a snapshot of your accomplishments. So I recommend, first of all, a clean, clear format that has enough white space and that's easy on the eye to read, because a lot of recruiters are just scanning through your resume, right? So you want to make sure it's easy to read, and you can ask, a few people and have it reviewed by a few people to see if your resume fits that criteria. The next thing you want to make sure is you want to include specific skills and experiences that are directly relevant to the role you're going after, right? So let's say you're going after a marketing role. You want to include keywords such as SEO, search engine optimization, right? Marketing strategy, lead conversions, right? Getting clients, um, email marketing, content marketing, depending on the role that you're going after. These would be the skills and the keywords you want to include. And then you want to talk about specifically your experience doing that. Okay. You may have had other roles. I would say in those roles, think about relevant aspects. So don't include everything from your previous roles, but pick bullet points that are relevant to the role you're going after, and remove things that are not relevant. And then the last piece is focusing on not just what you did in your roles, but what you achieved and the impact that you made. Right. So to give you an example, I see a lot of resumes that say something like, I designed a new training program for my staff. I mean, that's good, but as a recruiter, I would see this on almost every other application. So then how do you make your resume and your application stand out? You can do this by including achievements on your resume, right? So you can say something like improved employee satisfaction by 25% in 3 months, which ended up being $5,000 in savings by designing this new training program, right? So you can see how I have repositioned a task into an achievement. And I would recommend doing this for as many bullets as possible, because that will catch the eye of the recruiter. And this is what will make them want to talk to you. Typically, recruiters spend about 10 seconds on a resume. So if you have a resume that is not in a clean format, if you have a resume that is not relevant to the job you're applying for, and if you have a resume that does not focus on achievements, it is very likely that they will overlook your resume and move forward with somebody else's resume that meets this criteria, right? So keep these three things in mind. Now, resume is a very small piece, a very important piece, but a very strong, small piece of your overall job search. So then what else do you need to focus on? So once you're done with your resume, step number 4 is all about your LinkedIn profile. And I would say that your LinkedIn profile is even more significant than your resume. And the reason why it's even more significant is because everybody has open access to it, right? When you apply for a job, you submit a resume. But LinkedIn, anybody who, is connected with you or maybe even not connected with you can find you, can look at your profile, and possibly can have a conversation with you about opportunities, right? So you want to make sure right upfront in your job search process that you have a LinkedIn profile that is complete. So LinkedIn has about 12 to 15 sections. So make sure all of them are complete. And then the second thing you want to make sure is it's optimized. And when I say optimized, I mean it's optimized for your target role. So similar to your resume, you want to include those keywords, those skills, those experiences that are relevant. Okay. If you just click again on the slide, I just want to show something over here as well, Carla. So how can you maximize the power of LinkedIn, right? Like I said, first and foremost, complete your profile and optimize it. So an optimized profile is 40 times more likely to be found by employers. So that shows you how powerful that is. The second is not just having a profile and then hoping for people to find you and reach out to you. That seldom happens. So this is where you now start engaging on the platform in order to start getting noticed and increasing your visibility. And the third is establishing your brand on the platform. And I mean, that's a whole different topic on personal branding and how do you position yourself. But think about this as, identifying who you want to be seen as, right? And what is the subject matter expertise you want to be recognized for? And how is your skills, your experience different from other people who are also pursuing similar opportunities? So this is where, again, you want to speak about your achievements and then think about your unique value proposition. So what have you done in the past that is very specific to you and that demonstrates, high value to a potential employee? Okay, so that's your LinkedIn profile and branding. Step number 5, and this is probably the most important step that a lot of job seekers overlook, is networking, right? I'll give you some stats on, the power of networking. So one stat is that online applications. So if you just depend on applying for a job that you see on Indeed or LinkedIn or any of the job boards, your chances of getting an interview from an online job application is 5% or less. So think about this. If you submit 100 applications, the chances of getting an interview are about 5%. So not the best use of your time. However, if you begin networking and if you begin building relationships, and hopefully those relationships convert into getting referrals for opportunities, then your chances of getting an interview go from 5% to as high as 40%. Okay, so very important. And also, like you see on the slide over here, it is estimated that about 70 to 80% of the jobs are never posted online. And these are jobs that are filled through referrals, through recommendations, and through connections. When you think about networking, most people think about networking as a transaction, right? So you find people, you connect with them, and then you're trying to get something out of them, whether that is, a referral, a recommendation, or some information. I would challenge you to think about networking very, very differently. So it's not a transaction. It's not an approach where you're making someone feel used, right? Networking to me, and I don't even like the term networking sometimes. What I like to use instead is building meaningful connections, or BMC for short. So networking is about building meaningful connections. And this is really identifying who you want to network with, how you want to network with them. So, what does your messaging look like? How do you want to build and nurture the connection with them? And then once you've nurtured the connection, okay, what can you give to them and what can you get from them? Right? But at the beginning, it's nothing to do with your job search, getting a referral, getting a recommendation. At the beginning, it's just about connecting with the person, getting to know them, getting some advice from them, and also offering something back to them in terms of value. Okay. Once you do this, then that relationship gets built. And from the relationship, then you can be confident and comfortable in asking them for what is it that you need. But that never is the upfront approach. Okay. And there are so many benefits to networking. It's not just about networking to get your next job. Like you can see on the right side of this slide, networking provides us with so many opportunities, including mentorship, including learning, including getting ideas. And I would, invest time in your job search on networking and not just about applying for jobs and job applications. Okay. So that's step number 5, which is building meaningful connection. As part of networking, I highly recommend setting up informational interviews or setting up curiosity conversations where you're not just chatting with the person on email or LinkedIn, but you actually have a 15 to 30-minute conversation with that person, getting to know them, getting to know their journey, getting to know how they got into the role that maybe you're aspiring for, learning from them about, the organization, the culture, and then also spending a few minutes on the call, letting them know what is it that you want, right? And what is the value that you're able to offer? And then building on that initial conversation to create a meaningful and sustainable relationship. And then when the timing is right, asking them for what is it that you want. And sometimes you don't even need to ask. If you've built a strong enough relationship, they will come to you. And I can speak from personal experiences. So, when I was looking for jobs, throughout my 12, 15 years of working, I have never had to sit behind the computer and submit applications. Why? Because upfront in my career journey, I was fortunate enough to know about networking and building connections. And whenever I was looking for jobs, all I did was reach out to my network, or my network reached out to me. And this shows you how powerful networking and building meaningful connections can be. Okay. All right. So the next step in the process, once your resume is ready, your LinkedIn profile is ready, you have a good solid plan around networking. The next step, so the next slide, is then if you do all of these things right, I can tell you with certainty that you will start having some conversations and potentially some interviews as well, right? And you don't want to leave interview preparation for when you get the interview, right? You want to start thinking about this, as you're submitting applications, as you're talking to people, because you never know when the interview comes up, right? And I'm not going to go over every single bullet point on the slide, but these are my 10 best practices in terms of how can you confidently practice and prepare for interviews, right? In terms of interviewing, it's really a skill that, you know, people get better at as they practice more, right? None of us are born to be good interviewers. Yes, some of us, have more confidence than others. Some of us are better communicators than others. But when it comes to interviewing, again, I would say 80% of it is your mindset, your preparation, and your practice, right? The more you are prepared for it, the more better you will do. And what I've seen over the years as well is that it's not the most qualified person that gets the job. It's the person that is able to communicate and articulate their career stories and their accomplishments in the most concise, compelling, and confident way. Usually, those are the people that win in interviews and convert interviews into job offers. Okay, so preparation is extremely, extremely important. And the final step in my process is step number 7, which is negotiating your words, right? And you definitely need to be prepared to have those conversations. These days, things are moving very, very fast, right? So you will see a job posted, and within a few days, you will see, hundreds of applications for that job and interviews lined up and all of this. And typically these days, I also find salary conversations happening in the first interview itself or in the first conversation itself. So you want to be prepared. Now, how do you prepare yourself? Well, there's a few things you can do. First and foremost, know your current market worth. So there are many, websites out there such as Glassdoor, such as PayScale, where you can, put in your skills, your experience, your target job, and your location, and it will give you an approximation for the range for that position, right? Um, Second point is always be prepared for these conversations as early as your first interview. When it comes to negotiations, right? My recommendation is to always negotiate, because negotiation more often than not results in a positive outcome. I have never seen a negotiation resulting in um, an offer being taken away, for example, because a lot of people fear that, oh, if I try to negotiate, they might take the offer and give it to somebody else. I have never seen that happen. So if you do it in a strategic way, in a respectful way, where you're talking about your skills, your value, your worth, more often than not, you will end up getting what you want. Okay. So those are just, some steps on the slide over there. You always want to start negotiations with base salary first, because some of the other factors like bonuses and all of that depend on your base salary. So if money is of importance to you, I would say base salary first. If that doesn't work out, you can negotiate many other things as well, including, benefits, including flexible working, including a sign-on bonus, vacation time, training allowance for your development and growth. So there are many other things you can negotiate besides money. Okay. So I know I've been speaking a lot for the last, 30, 35 minutes. So I'm going to take a pause over here. And if you go to the next slide, this is just some information about it's really just my LinkedIn profile. So I'm not very heavy on social media. I've purposefully cut down on social media and I use predominantly LinkedIn. This is where I post content, I connect with people, I help job seekers. So if you are interested in learning more about me and following me and following my content, more than happy for you to do so, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn. And I'm happy to share that in the chat as well. But I hope this was helpful. I know it was a lot of information, but now we can open it up to some questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Johan. That was an amazing presentation. I've been in this industry for almost 20 years and I've learned so much from this amazing PowerPoint and your tips and tricks. And I really appreciate it. And I plan to share some of this um, these ideas with the folks I support in my own practice. So I'd love to bring this to the chat and ask some questions. But I had some specific questions before we get to that that I had. So I made notes on your steps, and I think they're wonderful. And I support them 110%. So I just want to talk about the first one, positive mindset. I agree with you 110%. You know, from one career practitioner to another, a positive mindset is everything. But my question is, because I've been in this position as a job seeker many times in my careers, in my own career, and supporting and in my work, you know, supporting folks who've been unemployed for quite some time and are having a hard time paying for their basic living needs and seeing other people around them employed, it can be really, really hard to have a positive mindset when you can barely pay for, you know, TTC. And so I'm just wondering, what are some ideas that you have around how to maintain a positive mindset and how to manage that? Because it can be so hard, Johan. I think that's such a huge monster when you're putting all this energy into your job search and you're not hearing back from anyone. You're getting interviews and it's just not happening for you. And you're thinking about, you know, like I said, paying for basic living needs. So I'm just wondering, what's the kind of support or advice that you give job seekers who can't get there, who can't have a positive mindset? They're having a hard time around that.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Anne, for your kindness. And I'm glad the session was helpful and the slides were helpful. I want to thank you for asking this question because this is a question that is so important, especially right now with everything that is going on, and scarcity of roles and intensive competition, and so many applications and people feeling very lost in terms of what to do, and then that having an impact on your thoughts, your confidence, your beliefs about yourself. Financially, people struggling, people facing mental health. So there's so many negative consequences. I would give a few suggestions over here. And I know some of this is easier said than done, but if you do this diligently, it does work out. So first and foremost is to be kind to yourself. So your career and your job does not determine who you are and your worth. Okay, there are many factors outside of your career that define you, right? So I would say, just because you've been unemployed or just because you've not been getting the results, our mind automatically goes into trash talking, right? So you may say things like, I'm always messing up, I don't know what success looks like anymore, I'm just bad at everything, right? And this is not going to serve you, right? And if it doesn't serve you, it doesn't serve your job search, it doesn't serve your relationships, any of that. So first and foremost is to be kind to yourself and accept yourself, and accept the situation. The second thing is the belief that you are creating for yourselves, right? And if you keep on having that negative thought pattern, then that becomes into more of a hardwired belief, and you want to avoid going there. Or if you have already gone there, you want to almost rewire yourself and come back into a space where, again, job searching is hard, but it's not who you are, and it does not determine your self-worth, and it should not impact the belief that you have in ourselves. uh, and the final thing I would say over here is taking consistent action. So despite being afraid, despite being fearful, despite having negative feelings, despite having negative voices, you want to make sure that you are taking small steps and consistent steps every single day. and showing up for yourself consistently every single day. So I don't know if you know, but on average, it takes Canadians about 5 to 6 months to land an opportunity, right? Some people get a job in 1 month, 2 months, it happens. But for the majority, it's about 5 to 6 months. So recognize that and appreciate that. In the market that we have today, it's taking even longer than the 5 to 6 months. However, it doesn't mean that you have to spend the next 6 months looking for a job. If you follow some of the steps that I outlined, and if you do it consistently, diligently, uh, things will speed up for you. Also, asking for help is something you should be comfortable doing, right? There are so many people out there who are willing to help, at no cost. They're willing to give you your time, to give you their time. It's just a question of identifying them and asking them for help, right? You may ask 20 people and 19 people might tell you no, but even if one person tells you yes, that one person could change your career trajectory and your life, right? To answer your specific question around finances and how do you cope up with that? I mean, each person's financial situation is different, and if you are really struggling to make ends meet and put food on the table, then of course you have to think about, okay, what can I take on in the interim? It might not be my ideal job, although I believe there's nothing like an ideal job, right? There's always something we find that is not, it's not completely perfect, right? So find something that you think might be easier for you to get your foot in the door, right? And then that will at least get your finances back on track. That will at least keep your mind occupied. That will again build up your confidence. And once you have that, then you can build off of that and look again for your job that you really want to get, right? So you know what your runway is. It's if it's been 6 months and now you've run out of resources and your family situation is not getting any better and you need to put food on the table, then of course you want to take something to get those finances in.
Mhm. And I appreciate everything you said, Johan. And I just want to remind all the folks out there with regards to not being afraid to get help. When you seek out support from folks like me or through Employment Ontario service providers or through most career practitioners, we do know about resources available if you're having challenges accessing a food or paying for your basic living needs. So don't be afraid to ask us. I mean, what's the worst that can happen, right? I mean, we understand it's all connected. And also don't be afraid to ask us about accessing mental health support, because I think that this is an issue that I mean, this is something that affects everyone. Everyone has mental health, and during a job searching, I think that one's mental health can potentially be challenged. So it's perfectly normal, and by I think that by following through with the suggestions that Johan provide with us, I think that really is very will help you a lot. Johan, I'm just gonna look through a few more questions I have because I can see this has been an amazing group. We are having so many incredible questions from the audience, so that's wonderful because it shows that they're very engaged. I can't wait to get to them. But I'm just gonna ask a few more of my own, trying to be choosy because there's so many good questions out there. Okay, so I'm just wondering with regards to resumes, and I know that a number of people in the chat had questions about them. Um, so I agree with you. Typically, when I'm chatting with folks, I suggest that they state what they did, how, and why. Sorry, and what were the results? Absolutely. But with regards to those numbers, percentages, what if you can't remember? And how can you verify? What if the employer reads your resume and said that you helped increase sales by something like 90%, and they say, "Well, show us proof," because it's really hard to go back and to find this. I mean, I've never experienced this, but what if it happens? Because I could literally make up things, like if I don't remember, and then employer says, "Well, show me proof." Or yeah, I just have a lot of questions around this because I agree with you, but it can also be challenging.
Yeah, another amazing question. So a lot of people who I talk to, especially when it comes to resumes, the piece that they struggle with the most
Hmm.
is coming up with quantifiable achievements,
Hmm.
right? And I give them a few tips around this. So, and you can use the tip that resonates with you and apply that. So we know for a fact that resumes that have numbers and accomplishments stand out more than resumes that have just your task and responsibilities, which means we have to put achievements. Now, what if you don't have any achievements? I would say challenge your thinking around that, right? All of us, when we work, we do tasks with a purpose, right? With something that is going to result in a positive outcome typically. So I want you to really think about, when you perform that duty or that task, or when you worked with your team, or when you worked on that project, what was the purpose? Ask yourself, why did you do that? Right? And this more often than not will typically give you the answer for the achievement. So that's my
Hmm.
first recommendation. My second recommendation is numbers. Accomplishments don't always have to be about percentages or dollar values. They can also be about numbers, right? So, for example, you worked with a team of 20 people, or you oversaw 5 projects in the year, right? So numbers also count as accomplishments. And it's not just about saving the company, $10 million, or increasing revenue, or decreasing, operating costs and all of this, right? So use numbers, use things like budgets, use number of people you serve, number of people you worked with, number of projects you worked on. All of those, will add numbers and substance to your resume. If you have a hard time remembering, see if you can go back and talk to a few people if that's an option for you, and maybe they can help you remember that, what, the project we worked on was a $5 million project, or when we implemented this system, this is what the result was, or when we reduced that process from 10 steps to 5 steps, this is the impact it had. Okay. And I always say also, if you're completely lost, you can go online. And these days, there are so many resources online where you can search for achievements, right? So let's say you are in talent acquisition and you've been a recruiter, right? And you did a bunch of hiring, you did a bunch of interviewing, you did a bunch of onboarding. So you can put some numbers around that, but you have no idea how to put in percentages and dollar value. Just do a Google search for talent acquisition KPIs, and this will, or talent acquisition metrics. And this will give you a list of KPIs and metrics that you probably never even thought about before. So an example is time to hire, right? That's a metric that talent acquisition folks get measured on. So how much time did you take to hire someone, right? Just to give you an example. Marketing has, their own metrics. Finance has their own metrics. I've also used Chat GPT, right, as just giving you some ideas and directions. Can you come up with 10 achievements for a marketing coordinator role? And then you can go through that list and see which ones possibly you've done in the past, and then add that to your resume. So there are many different ways of doing it, but you certainly want to think about not just what you did, but what you achieved and the impact you made. Sometimes achievements also come in the form of recognition. So if a leader recognized you for something, that can be an achievement. It can also come in the form of promotion, right? So if you received promotions, if you received certain awards, those are all examples of achievements as well.
And I would take this one step further, Johan. I would suggest that folks familiarize themselves with their resumes so that when they move into the interview phase, which you mentioned was one of the steps, the step number 6 in staying motivated in your job search as part of the process. So you get to know your resume, get to know your accomplishments, because when you're in your interview, basically when they ask you questions about tell me about yourself or any of the questions, really do your best to highlight your accomplishments, to back them up. So familiarize yourself once you have all of these amazing accomplishments that you garnered, but familiarize yourself with them because as you have interviews, try to present them as much as you can. But that was really, really great advice. Thank you, Johan. I'm going to ask one more question from that I came up with. I'm trying to decide here. Um, okay. So my question is, okay, this is my last question, and I'm gonna take it to the chat. And remember, folks, if we don't get to all of the questions in the chat, we'll be reviewing these questions, and I will be sending them to Johan, who we will ask if he could potentially take time. I was very busy scheduled to answer. I could also answer them too. But my question is around the salary, and I think this is very interesting. I really appreciate that you brought up this as a step. So salary negotiation. Okay, one of the reasons why I love that you added this, it is actually uplifting because it's kind of like reminding us, okay, if there's a high possibility I'm going to get a job of this thing and I'd be ready to negotiate salary. And I'm wondering when you were talking about the different ways to prepare for negotiation salary, what do you think about this idea? Because when I've been supporting folks who have interviews and they have questions around salaries, I ask them to beforehand, and everyone, if you don't know, to sit down with your finances and figure out what the cost of your basic living needs and also to be able to save a little bit so just in case. So ideally, you should have 3 months worth. So I suggest that folks go into interviews um, being prepared um, to share to sorry, being aware of what salary they need to provide for their basic living needs and more. And what do you think about this as a way to prepare for the salary negotiation question?
Yeah, I love that. I think that is a good first step. When I mentioned salary, I mentioned, the first thing you want to do is do some research
Hmm.
and come up with, it doesn't have to be a very specific number, but come up with a range of what you would be comfortable with, right? So you want to have a minimum baseline and then you want to have your maximum as well. And then any negotiation that you have or that's upcoming for you, you want to keep that range in mind, right?
Hmm.
So, like I said, there are many websites, tools out there that can help. But you can also talk to people, right? Because numbers keep changing also depending on the market. Right now, because there is an oversupply of talent in the market, I've heard that the negotiating power that you have is not so much compared to in a market that doesn't have it doesn't have that much talent, right? And it's more of an employee market, but right now it's an employer market,
Mm.
right? So you have to be respectful of market conditions as well. But like I said before, my recommendation is to always negotiate. A lot of people don't negotiate either because they feel guilty negotiating, that I'm being greedy and I don't want to come across as being greedy, or they're like, Johan, I just have a job. I've been job searching for 6 months and I just want to accept it. It doesn't matter what the money is, right? But like Anne said, you want to make sure that the amount you receive is going to help you meet your needs and then some more, right? And the funny thing is, employers expect you to negotiate, and recruiters expect you to negotiate. And in my years of coaching people, I would say 90 to 95% of the people who negotiated uh, got something that they wanted. Not exactly what they wanted, but they got better than what was being offered to them. So that's a very high percentage, 90 to 95%. So always, negotiate money, perks, benefits, whatever it is, on the offer that you feel that you uh, deserve more of, and that you are, showing the value to compensate for that money.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Johan. And that ends my Q&A portion of this amazing chat that we're having today. So now I'm going to take it to the chat from our participants and some incredible questions. So I'm just going to take a look here. So one of our participants says, "New grad here. From your view, how can I brand myself on LinkedIn as I don't have any experience? If you can provide some tips, we would appreciate that." So what do you think? So new grad doesn't have, you see, I disagree. It's impossible not to have any work experience because everyone has some kind of work experience, whether it's volunteer or if you helped your professor or you're babysitting or something. But let's say you don't feel that you have any work experience. How do you brand yourself on LinkedIn? What would you suggest, Johan?
Yeah, that's a great question and one that I get very, very often, especially from people who have not worked before, who are just recently graduating. So thank you for that question. I would agree with what Anne just said, right? I would say you have to challenge yourself to think about what you have done in the past. And it may not be direct work experience where you had a job and you gained experience in that job, but it could be anything else that you have done, most likely in your education, because when you study you work with people, you work on projects, you may have had maybe an internship, or you may have helped a professor with something, right? So all of this counts for experience. Sometimes you may have also done things outside of the education setting, maybe in a volunteer capacity, or helping the community, or supporting a donation or a food drive, right? So all of these things counts for experience. Anytime you are using a skill set counts for experience, whether that is direct or indirect work experience. Um, I would also say if you still are struggling with that, then try to get some experience. Okay, whether if your financial situation allows for it, volunteering and getting involved in the community is an excellent way to build up experiences. And I have had quite a few people actually last year who did not have experience in the field that they wanted to get into, but they volunteered with an association or a nonprofit, and they did that for a few months, put that experience on their resume, on their LinkedIn profile, and ended up with a job in that field. So I cannot, you definitely cannot underestimate the power of getting involved in the community, getting involved with volunteering, helping associations. So it's just about being creative in terms of how you make up that quote unquote experience.
I couldn't agree with you more. You literally took the words out of my mouth. Thanks for that, Johan. The next question I'd like to ask from the chat is, when you say to engage on LinkedIn, how would you do that?
Yeah, that's another great question. So, a lot of people I find are very lost on LinkedIn. So they know, they know LinkedIn is important. They know it's an important part of the job search, but they don't know what to do besides creating a profile, completing the profile, and then optimizing it with keywords. Like I said before, that is only 50% of the battle, right? The bigger piece on LinkedIn is how you use the platform, right? So, how are you connecting with people? Who are you connecting with? How do you show up when you make those connections, right? So, when it comes to LinkedIn engagement, I'll give you a few different things you can do. First and foremost, I would say think about how you can grow your network. Okay, so grow the amount of connections you have, because more connections equals more visibility and more opportunities. Okay, so step number one is just getting that number high up, and I'm not randomly sending out connection requests, being mindful and purposeful about who you connect with. So that could include professions, professionals in your field, professionals in the field that you want to go after, professionals working in your target companies, recruiters, hiring managers, people of influence who you want to follow and role model after. So it could be any one of those category or more than one category of people. So building your network and your connections to help increase your visibility. The second piece is how you engage with those people. So did you just connect with them and that's it? Or have you taken the time to get to know them, to get on an informational interview with them, to nurture that relationship? Right? So that's step number two. Step number three is about what are you doing in the platform, right? And typically from a job search perspective, there are two things I would recommend. One is being very active on the platform and engaging with people. When I say engaging, I mean, connecting with people, but then also following them and engaging with anything that they post, anything that they share. So you can like it, you can comment on it, you can share it with your network, you can send them a message thanking them for it. So these are all different ways of engaging with, the new connections you're building. If you want to take it one step further, you can also begin posting content on LinkedIn and using that as a platform to demonstrate your expertise, to demonstrate your knowledge, to demonstrate
Oh,
your
you're frozen,
expertise.
Johan. Oh, frozen. You might want to leave and then come back. Sorry about this, everyone. Online technology, isn't it great? And he was giving us such great advice. Um, so I'm actually going to step in just for a moment, although Johan is our guest, and once he comes
Post
back,
of yours.
oh, there he is.
Yeah.
You were frozen.
Oh,
Thank goodness
sorry.
you're back. That's okay. And it's such invaluable information. I can't believe you were frozen. Okay, I'm so glad you're back. Yes.
Thank you for that check. So yeah, posting content opens up, a door of possibilities for you. And I know posting is not easy, right? Especially if you're not used to writing. So start small, maybe once a week, twice a week, and then you can scale up from there. The final recommendation I have for engagement is finding groups on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn has a section called groups. So over here, you can find groups that are related to your profession, to your interest. And over here, you also have association. So for example, if you're into project management, you can join the Project Management Institute, the PMI, and you can find the local chapter for your specific location. When you join that group, you get access to all of the group members who are similar, project management professionals. And it becomes so easy then to start adding those people to your networks, to start having conversations to those with those people, right? And these groups have a wealth of information in terms of upcoming events, in terms of volunteer opportunities, in terms of jobs that you would only have access to if you're part of that. So I would say, take that action of and maybe join 3 to 5 groups that really align with your career over there.
Thanks, Johan. And it's interesting how things have changed in terms of the importance of LinkedIn. When I first started my career as an employment counselor, I talked about showing up to places in person and chatting. LinkedIn was sort of an afterthought, but it's amazing now how important it is. And I think that it's actually advantageous for job seekers because there's so many ways that this platform can help us with really not having to leave the comfort of our home, and especially with for people with accessibility challenges, if the weather's bad, as long as they have good internet, a pretty good internet access, which I realize can be a challenge for some. There's so many amazing ways that you can use LinkedIn. And also, Johan, talking about your own experiences and not having to apply for a single job. I mean, that's amazing. I've had to apply to lots of jobs, but I've also had the opportunity to be recruited. And I know about other people who have been recruited through LinkedIn. And so I think this also emphasizes the importance of making sure you truly utilize LinkedIn, because that's the ideal situation, right, Johan, where you don't have to apply for jobs. People come after you. And I would argue that if your LinkedIn profile's that good and that you are doing everything you're supposed to and you're part of groups and you have a lot of people that you're connected with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you will have people that will come to you because it's a lot it's a time saving measure for HR people. So thank you for that. But there's so many great questions here from the chat. Okay, the next question I have is how important is upgrading your education in today's market, especially with the talk of AI and how it's merging with AR, with HR? So speaking of technology, what are your thoughts about this, Johan?
Yeah, great question over there. Thank you, Saad, for asking that question. I always say, education is of different importance to different people, right? At the end of the day, any kind of education, courses, certifications you take is helping you build up knowledge, and knowledge is power, right? But I would say, before you just sign up for another degree or you take another course or certification, having clarity on what is it that you want to do and what is required for success in that occupation, right? And you can get this information through job postings, you can get this information through talking to people, and then you almost reverse engineer that and say that, what, I'm targeting a project management role, and out of the 10 job postings I've seen, 8 of them had the PMP designation, and this is what I really want to pursue. So it's almost like a no-brainer that you want to get the PMP certification, right? Or there are certain skills that are required in this job, and I don't have those skills. So then you have to build up those skills, whether that is through education or through experience, right? So before you make the decision on courses, certification, education, think about what is it that you want, think about what is required for success, and think of it backwards from that perspective, as opposed to, I'll do the PMP and then I'll do 2 years of this and I'll do 1 year of this. And it's, so much time, money, resources gone, but it's not in the direction that, you want to go for. So I hope that answers the question.
I think that was a great answer. And if I can just add to this, I want to remind everyone that one of the great things about engaging in courses at the School of Continuing Studies through U of T is that they're taught by people who are working in those industries. So if you decide it's the right path for you to take some courses, in addition to acquiring those skills and be able to put this course or the courses that you complete or the certifications on your resume, but you'll also be able to network with professionals who are teaching the course, but also you'll be surrounded by them in the classroom. So you can through schools of continuing studies at U of T, and there's also some other great schools too, but obviously I represent U of T and I love what we do and we have the best of the best. But this actually increases your network, and this will, in addition to getting the certifications, you will increase your chances of getting of building your network, with, as Johan said, is really key to finding careers that you want. Okay, so let's take a look here. Now, this is a great question. I was told by an HR interviewer that the salary range for, I love salary questions because they're so tricky. A salary range for a given job has nothing to do with what the job is worth in the market. It depends entirely on what the company has budgeted for the job. That's true. If you need, and that's all caps, a job to pay your bills and you're willing to take a lower paying salary, lower than what you're worth in the market, given your years of experience, how do you word your desired salary range in a job application? Most jobs don't even list a salary range. Can I just want to answer this a little bit, Johan. I'd love to hear what you said because I actually made a note on this. Johan, so I understand it can be, I really get annoyed when employers don't post the salary because that's going to determine whether or not I'm going to apply. Because as much as I love, being a career counselor, I'm not working just because it's fun. I know lots of people are able to, but I need to pay for my basic living needs. And so when they don't disclose the salary, it's such a risk. But Johan, I recently learned that the government, I don't implemented a law that employers have to disclose the salary because it does put you in a very awkward position, especially when they ask you what your salary range is. What are your thoughts about this? And do you know about that new law? And if so, has it been implemented? What are your thoughts about all this?
Yeah, no, great question. And thank you again for highlighting salary because it's such an important topic. So yes, the law, it's not become a law Canada wide yet,
Okay.
but there are certain provinces that have started when it has, and one of them is British Columbia. So it
Oh,
happened in BC last year,
hmm,
which now mandates employers to post salary. Ontario is believed to be the next one
great.
sometime this year to go. But a lot of companies have started being proactive and started posting salary ranges. So, for example, Deloitte now on all of their job postings will have a salary range. And I think a lot of companies, will start doing that until it obviously becomes a law when you will be mandated to do it. Um, so the other question was, how do you word your desired salary range in an application? So again, this comes down to doing your research. This comes down to having conversations, and some recruiters are very open to having conversations with you, especially agency recruiters, external recruiters, uh, where they will tell you that, based on what I see, your skills, your experience, specifically your Canadian experience, if you are a newcomer, this is the role, this is the level, and this is the salary range that we have in the market for that. Um, so I would say, in addition to online, having conversations with people will give you that, and so that this way you are, prepared with at least a ballpark range, and that you're not completely, off when it comes to the conversation. One of the things that I also recommend is when you actually get into a conversation with a recruiter or a hiring manager, if you are unsure, even after the research, even after the conversations, you can politely ask them that, what is the budget you have in mind for this role? Or what is the expected
Yeah.
salary range for this role? And you can position it in a way that, money is important, but it's not my number one value or my number one criteria for accepting the role. For me, it's really what I do in the role, the organization and the people that I work for that takes precedence. And if you wouldn't mind, can you tell me what budget you have in mind? Right. And they may or may not tell you the budget, but it's worth asking. So this way they at least give you a range, and then that you should not put out a number that is completely off, and something within that range would be reasonable.
Hmm. And in terms of the wording, Johan, on a resume, if they request the salary range, I'm just wondering what you think of this because I was thinking about this in my head because it is such a good question. So if they ask you your salary range, could you say it at something like, as per requested, I would feel comfortable with the salary range between X and Y. So be comfortable in that way. It doesn't sound like it's demanding. On the other hand, you could say you could argue that you should be more assertive and say, as per your posting, I would need. So I guess to me, Johan, it would probably depend on your like how comfortable you would feel with your language because it is really tough. But I think again, if you say as per the posting, I'm not just saying this, I'm not just giving my salary range because it's fun for me. I hate this because who would like that? As per the request on the posting, I would I would personally feel comfortable or I would feel comfortable because I'm thinking about the wording. Or what do you think about that? Do you think that would be okay or what do you think?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of job applications, when you fill out the form, they have
Mhm.
you put in a number,
Ah,
right? If that is required, then you have to put in a number, and this is where again research conversations will help you determine that range. However, if you're okay, if you're allowed to not put in a number over there, then I love, and what you said with regards to, based on the requirements for the role, I would be comfortable with something between this range.
yeah. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Uh, yeah, yeah. The other thing is, if you are being approached by recruiters, right, or uh, for opportunities, you can also mention that based on my research, as well as
Yeah.
based on recruiters approaching me with opportunities, this is the way.
Hmm. And I agree with you. I think research is everything because you have that to back it up as you're talking about your salary negotiations. We have a really amazing question in the chat here, and all of them have just been so incredible. Thanks everyone for being so engaged with Johan and I. I've really enjoyed chatting with all of you today. So we have a question from RS. He says, "Do you have a recommendation on how to join a job search support group? It's often difficult to go through the process alone and keep oneself motivated." One of the reasons why I love this question is because in my career, I recognize that, it's just such an isolating experience looking for work, and in that way, I've tried to start my own job search groups among my clients. But it's so hard to find these folks. So I'm just wondering what you would recommend, because I actually, if you can somehow find a job search support group, I think that's so invaluable, because it's just so isolating looking for work, Johan. So I'd love to hear your tips on this.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Anne. I think, and this goes back to, our mindset and our attitude towards the job search. When
Hmm.
you do it day after day, in isolation, it can really take a toll on you. So I 100% believe that, if you have, even if it's just one person, where that person serves as, a sounding board for you, or an accountability partner for you, or a mentor for you, I think is so much valuable. So that way you know that it's not just you, and you don't feel that isolation, right? There are groups out there, on platforms, like LinkedIn, but also on channels such as Slack, where you can join them, and even WhatsApp groups that I've heard of, where you can join, and you come in touch with other people going through the similar journey, and you may even find people who are looking for the same profession and the same roles, and you can exchange ideas with them, right? And it's hard. Job searching is hard, and any help, support, encouragement you can get, whether that is formally through an employment counselor or a coach, or just informally through family, friends, people you find online, I think will certainly help with your mental health and your, possibly your preparation as well.
Mm. And Johan, something just occurred to me. So on LinkedIn, would it, what do you think about the idea? So if I were a job seeker and I'd like to have a support group, if I put it out there as a post, just say, "Hey everyone, as you know, I'm interested in finding work, and I would love to put together a group of folks such as myself who are highly motivated professionals who are looking for employment." What do you think about that approach if a person's connected enough?
Yeah, I like that idea actually, right? And there are people who post all the time about, I'm open to work and
Hmm.
I'm looking for opportunities. So this is very similar to that, but now you are, first of all, putting it out there, not just that you're looking for work, but that you're happy to be a part of a group, and solicit people for a group. So I like that idea. I think, definitely, if you feel isolated and you feel like you're just talking to yourself and you're just so by yourself, that's an amazing idea to post something about it and see who comments on it, or who likes it, and then you can start engaging with those people.
Thanks, Johan. So I encourage all of you to do that. No, I'm kidding. If you feel comfortable, obviously. But again, looking for work, it can just be such an isolating experience, and that can really have a negative impact on your mental health. And be able to share your experiences, your successes, your challenges, and as a way to network with other folks, I think that can really elevate your job search. I'm going to see if we have time for maybe one or two more questions. The problem is these questions are so amazing, and I want to utilize your time while you're here because I'm just so incredibly impressed by your bio, and also, of course, your engagement with us today. Okay, Johan, and I love these LinkedIn questions because you are our LinkedIn person. So, okay, can you suggest some ways to increase visibility on LinkedIn? How to attract potential recruiters to review my LinkedIn profile? Thanks. And I want to follow up with this too. I always have so much to add because I'm so interested in this conversation. So, I've obviously engaged in resources to help me with my LinkedIn. And, number one is put your photo there, for example. And I understand that on one hand because it shows that you're serious and that and it puts a face to a name. But also, you could also say that something like that, even though it might increase your visibility, people could discriminate against you based on XYZ. So starting with the top, like, what are some quick tips? Because I'm aware of the time we have 7 minutes, and I'm sure we could talk about this for a really long time. But what are some ways that you can increase your visibility on LinkedIn if there are indeed recruiters out there snatching folks like all of you up to work for them? Let's hear it, Johan.
Yeah, so there are two components of LinkedIn that are extremely important. One is the visuals and the aesthetics, and the other one is the actual content, right? So, from a visual perspective, definitely your picture speaks so much more louder than the words because just by looking at your picture, people can have perceptions on your professionalism, on how approachable you are, on how friendly you are. So, definitely invest in taking a good, professional picture. Your banner is the other visual aspect of LinkedIn, where you have free real estate space over there to let people know who you are and what you do. uh, Besides that, in order to increase your visibility, it comes down to the content, right? So the headline, which is below your name, is extremely important because when you are browsing or searching for people, all you see is their picture and the first few words within their headline. So make sure that headline really speaks to what you're going after. So you can put in your target role over there and you can put in a couple of keywords. So when people search for you, it shows up because they do search based on your headline.
Hmm,
Okay. The
interesting.
other important piece is your experience section. So make sure your experience section again is completed with achievement based bullet points. Another one that really is important, especially from a search perspective, is your skill section, right? So LinkedIn lets you add 50 skills. So I would suggest filling up as many as close to 50 skills, and then it lets you rank your top two skills. So for your top two skills, again, pick the skills that are directly relevant to your target role. So when people search for you, you rank higher compared to other people who may have picked some other irrelevant skills. So I would say those things are important. And then in addition to that, once you've taken care of your profile, again, it's about how you show up and how you engage on the platform.
Mm. Those are all really good tips. And one of the amazing things too is that there are so many free resources online and books in the old-fashioned way that you can pick up to help you out. And I would recommend to really invest in those resources because, like Johan said, I totally agree with you, Johan. LinkedIn these days, it's more important than a resume. And I've actually seen, I don't know about you, Johan, some pretty interesting resumes. And yes, okay, I mean, I realize that they are super important, but I've seen some resumes that I thought, okay, but they still got the job because it was through their connections. It was how they were able to communicate with the employers. I don't know if you've heard this story, Johan, but this was a while back in the newspaper. It's a great story about this one particular recent graduate. I think she was in marketing and she was part of the Nicolas Cage fan club. And she was the president or something like that. And I don't know if the audience has heard about this story, but she meant to apply to, a very serious marketing job, and she was ready to go with her cover letter and resume, and she accidentally sent Nicolas Cage's headshot to them. And you think this would be a giant disaster, and obviously it was not intentional, but it got her noticed. She got in front of these people who interviewed her, and she was hired. So an interview resume is important, obviously, and I agree with you. You need to put your best foot forward, but it's not everything. It's how it's those networking connections and uh and how you're able to communicate during interviews. Anything else around that? And my goodness, Johan, like in 1 minute, because I just want to utilize your wealth of information. I just find it amazing that you've never had to actually apply to a job. So any additional tips with regards to networking? I know this is like a huge topic for us here at Blueprint Career Services, but it's so important. So additional tips, like especially if you're the type of person who's kind of shy, who doesn't like having conversations with people, takes a lot of effort, but any tips to get yourself sort of in there, so to speak?
Yeah, so you know that networking, your LinkedIn profile, your personal branding is such an important part of your job search. And if you know that, you don't want to be spending months and months behind it, so it's just common sense for us to invest our time wisely and focus more on that as opposed to, keeping on changing our resume or applying to 100 jobs in a week, right? So just keep that in mind and think about how you invest your time and what the focus of your time in the job search should be. I always say that, conversations as opposed to applications. So the more people you talk to, the more connections you have, the more people know that you exist and you're looking for opportunities, then there's more likelihood that someone will either help you or reach out to you or reach out to someone who might help you, right? So invest in those conversations and those connections because that is the most efficient and effective way of getting interviews. And of course, like I said, then once you have the interview, you have to be prepared to communicate, to articulate your stories. But like Anne said, a lot of what you say on the interview is directly from your resume. So if you've done a good job writing accomplishments on your resume, automatically that translates into a good positive employ interview experience as well.
I really appreciate that. And if you have family members who get on your case like I've had or say, "Oh, why are you wasting your time with networking? Apply to jobs, just keep applying." Show them some stats. It's out there. Things have changed. Back in the day, it wasn't about networking so much. You apply to jobs, you just send in your resumes, but things have changed. This is how people get jobs. They network. And with that, Johan, I don't know how this happened. It's 1:30. That means I have to say goodbye to you for now. But we'll stay in touch via LinkedIn, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, thank goodness. So, I just want to remind everyone that I know that we haven't had a chance to get to all those questions. I will be putting them together for Johan to review, and we'll be answering them. But I really appreciate everyone being here, asking some incredible questions. It's amazing, Johan. If I can just share, we have had a really incredible turnout. And I'm not good at math, but I think it's been more than 60%, which I'd have to ask our amazing, incredible administrator about this. But I think that's a pretty good record, like a record for us, because most people who sign up they aren't able to attend, which is fine. But this just goes to show that all of you are so invested in this topic, and it's one that's helping so many people. So with that, I'd like to thank Johan, from the bottom of our Blueprint Career Services heart, and thank you everyone for an amazing, amazing panel, amazing discussion. You sat here at lunchtime. You were here. Thank you, thank you. Don't forget to reach out to us if you want some one-on-one support. And Johan was kind enough to share his LinkedIn. So with that, happy Wednesday. Have a great afternoon. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your day. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Anne. Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Johan. Thank you. Bye now.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Have a nice day.